The world is a diverse and beautiful place. Have you ever wanted to travel the globe, exploring one exotic land, and waking up the next day somewhere completely different? Experiencing the nature, the people, the culture, the art, ancient and new. Come along with me. From ice to desert, beaches to mountains, in the jungle, in the city, and everywhere in between. Soaking in the splendor Mother Earth and all her inhabitants have to show us. By air, by land, by sea, this is Around the World at the Speed of Mike.
Leaving Australia, I flew to Kuala Lumpur for the third time on my trip, just as a layover. I had another connection on AirAsia again to the special administrative region of China called Macau. Macau is basically Asia's Las Vegas. It's a former Portuguese colony, kind of like how Hong Kong was a colony of the United Kingdom. Both places have a similar relationship to China, which technically they are a part of China, but they have a degree of autonomy where they have their own political and economic system. For instance, both places have their own currency and visa entry and exit procedures. They're both free of charge. Certainly the biggest draw for Macau is its casinos. You can see most of the same casinos you would see in Las Vegas in Macau. And you could argue which city is better to visit. Personally, I think Vegas takes it on the party atmosphere and its compact strip, whereas I think Macau is probably more interesting for its cultural and historic fusion. There's plenty of cultural landmarks and sites that kind of hark back to its shared Portuguese and Chinese heritage, but one in particular that I mentioned before was Azulejos from Portugal. Basically, the blue and white pottery style originated in the Middle East around Mesopotamia, and as I understand it, it traveled to China, where it was kind of refined and then headed back to the Middle East in its own style, through North Africa, and then during the Moorish invasion entered Portugal. The Portuguese had colonies all over the world, so it was just really interesting to see how something that originated in the East came back to itself as Portuguese wall art, with Chinese artistry added to it. To me, it was just kind of like playing a game of telephone over thousands of years and countries. Getting around Macau is pretty easy to begin with. It's not very large. There's just a northern mainland portion and then a southern island portion to it. Top sites are certainly, for starters, the casinos, Wynn, the Venetian. I think the most interesting one is the Grand Lisboa. It just has a really unique shape to the building, kind of just like a sprawling, I don't know. Some people think it's ugly, I think it's cool. The most iconic historic site would be the Cathedral of St. Paul. It's just the front face of a cathedral built by the Portuguese. I think it burned down at some point, and that's all that survives, basically. There's a fort right next to that, and the fort is half fort and half museum, and you can see the history of Macau in it. There's a ton of, like, spots you can visit. I think probably the most prominent, after the ones I just mentioned, are Ama Temple and Taipa Village. Ama Temple is just a Chinese religious temple, and then Taipa Village is just a Portuguese colonial village. Instead of getting a room in Macau, I spent hotel money on just gambling instead, and I gambled the whole night from midnight till basically 9 in the morning, I think. I just sat at a roulette table. I spent about $40 to $50. It lasted the whole night. I was up like 100 3 times, and I finally just lost it by mid-morning, so I don't know, I thought that was a decent way to spend my money versus a hotel. I probably spent about $10 to $20 on food, maybe $1 to $2 on a bus that took me from the southern island to the northern mainland portion of it. The ferry to Hong Kong is in the northern part. That cost $30. So overall, I think I spent $80 in Macau for one night, or day, whatever you want to call it. The 2 flights from Australia to Macau cost $159 total. Both were on AirAsia, and both were booked about a week before, so I probably could have got them for cheaper as well. We're 61 days into the trip, and I've spent about $2,842 US thus far. Up next, we're going to head to Hong Kong. Hey, if you'd like to see more videos like that, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out the rest of my videos around the world at the speed of Mike.